Well, howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here again, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today we're going to create some Windows 10 gold images for our lab. Now I've done one of these videos before, but I wanted to do an updated one today just so you can see how it's changed for 2020. And actually I'm going to do two of these. This is the first one I did. I actually filmed this about a month ago. I'm so behind on videos, I've been so busy with other things that I didn't get a chance to post this video. So I'm going to post this one, and then I'm going to do another one on creating Windows 10 gold images with your actual software pre-installed on it so that you can compare them apples to apples, right? Now, for those of you that don't know what a gold image is, suffice it to say it's basically an operating system that has been installed, has had all the updates run on it, and in some cases all the applications you're going to need. It's basically an image of the operating system you're going to deploy, whether it be virtually or physically. So what we would do is we would create one master image to rule them all, i.e. a gold image, and then we would make copies, sysprep it after we got all the software installed, and then we would use that to copy to multiple machines to make it easier to deploy a Windows operating system, because as you know, when you install Windows, it could take an hour or two to get everything installed and configured the way you want it. This way it allows you to do it ahead of time and then just deploy the machines as you go. You can do this with server operating systems as well, at least with Windows server operating systems as well. So as you can imagine, it's a pretty handy tool to have around. So that's what we're going to cover today in this video, is how to create those gold images and the methods that I use to create them and deploy them. Now, in addition to this, I'm also at some point going to show you how to set up physical Windows 10 machines or Linux machines, or even Macs for that example, and show you how to connect them to an Active Directory domain-controlled network. That's the goal of this. So let's get the video started right now. I've been working on it, like I said, for the last month, so I'll let you take a look at it and tell me what you think. So part of creating a lab is you need to create your virtual machines. Like if you're going to run Windows 10, Windows 7, Ubuntu, some other Linux desktop operating system, or even for that matter server operating system, what you want to do is create a master image with everything on it you need, all the updates installed, and then you want to do something called sysprepping it, or you freeze that image in time and clone it, make an image of it so that you can copy it multiple times and create more virtual machines out of it. As you know, the process of installing Windows 10 on a virtual machine, as I've shown you before, can take quite a bit of time to do. Once you do all the updates, install Google Chrome and all that other stuff, whereas you could just do it one time, create an image of it, make copies, and you're ready to go. So that's what we're going to do today. Two things before we start. One is you have a choice when you create a new virtual machine. You have a choice to create a Gen 1 or a Gen 2. Now I'm going to call this Windows 10-P-Gold. Windows 10-P-1909-Gold. I'm putting the revision number in there because there are no more versions of Windows out there, not after Windows 10 supposedly, but they do have build versions. So this is going to be a 1909, and 1909 just came out, so I thought it'd be a good time to show you how we make a gold image. Click on next. Now this is what I'm talking about. You either have the choice to create a Gen 1 or a Gen 2. Now there's no reason you have to use a Generation 2 machine. You will get a couple more features and have UEFI boot and that kind of thing. But if you're not interested in that, and for the ease of converting a virtual machine from Hyper-V to another hypervisor, which I really don't recommend, creating images is fairly easy, no matter whether you use ESXi, VMware, Zen, or even Proxmox for that matter. But just be aware that it's easier to create another virtual machine on another platform with a Gen 1 machine than it is with Gen 2. So, but for this video, we're going to use a Gen 2 because it's going to be Windows 10. Click on next. I'm going to give it 4 gig of RAM. I've got lots of RAM. and I'm going to connect it to the 10 gigabit network. I'm going to let it create a 127 gig hard drive. Some other, yeah, just let it create a 127 gig hard drive. You can make that as small as 80. I wouldn't go any smaller than 80. And this is a dynamically expanding hard drive, so it's thin provisioned. In other words, it won't assign all that space right away. It's another reason I love to use Hyper-V, because of the thin provisioning of the disks, or the dynamically expanding hard drive. Click on Next. We're going to install an operating system later, and I'm going to just click on Finish. Now, keep in mind I'm running off shared storage. This is an iSCSI drive. Drive I is my iSCSI drive, and that's what I'm sharing my virtual machines off of. So there's the virtual machine files, and there's the virtual hard drives that I just created. So remember, I told you it dynamically expands the hard drive, so right now it's only 4 gig, or 4 meg. 4 meg. The server, on the other hand, is 17 gig, even though I've given that a 127 gig hard drive. It only expands as it needs it. So the machine is created. Now I'm going to go to Settings, and I'm going to load the DVD drive. I'm going to add it and have it boot off of an image file. Now I've saved my images over onto my V drive under ISO. There's my Windows 10 1909 install file. I'm going to open that. I'm going to apply. Now, a couple of things I like to do. I don't use Secure Boot, so I turn that off. And then I move my DVD drive up to the top in the boot order. I'm also going to give this 4 CPUs. Windows 10 runs better with virtual CPUs. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and right click and connect, and then I'm going to start the virtual machine. So let's see if it boots off the install CD. It does. I quickly press any key to continue or to load the installer. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the actual install. You know how to install Windows. I don't have to tell you that. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and get Windows 10 installed, and then I'll come back once we're done with that. So as you can see here, Windows 10 is installed. Let's go out and look at Task Manager and see if it's got the resources I gave it. So we'll see here, you'll see here it's using those low power L5640 Xeon processors. It has been assigned 4 of them, 4 gig of RAM, a hard drive, etc. Let's see what's eating up CPU processes. OneDrive, why does that not surprise me? Alright, so while OneDrive is in the back trying to totally destroy your machine with its setup program, we're going to go right click here, and we're going to adjust date and time. And we're going to change the time zone we're in, just so everything goes swimmingly. So that's done. So we'll let OneDrive setup run. Now, I've got Windows 10 Pro 1909 installed, but it's had a few updates since 1909 was released. So we're going to come down here, go to Settings, and go to Update and Security. Alright, so there are some updates, as you can see. So let's get all the updates done. Alright, so we're back. All the updates are done. Now the next thing we want to do is perform a procedure called Sysprep. Now, at this point, you could install things like Google Chrome, if you use OpenOffice, LibreOffice, or something like that, whatever apps you want on this machine. I'm going to leave mine plain vanilla. It just makes things easier. It's trivial to install those other apps. Now, if you had 40 or 50 machines to do, then you might want to include those programs in this image. I'm not going to worry about it. What I am going to do is Sysprep it. So I'm going to go out to the, C Windows System 32 folder. And under there is a folder called Sysprep. Now, there are other ways to prepare an image. I just like Sysprep because it's No muss, no fuss, it's easy. But if you had some advanced options you wanted to do on your imaging, there are other ways to do images. I don't know that I'll do a video on it, but I might. Who knows? I like the simple, easy way. So just double click on Sysprep. Make sure you enter out of the box experience as your selection and generalize it. And make sure you tell it to shut down. You don't want it to reboot because then it'll start setup again. And we don't want it to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And it'll do its thing. It'll come up here and give you a notice that Sysprep is working. And we're just going to let this run. And there we go. So it's going to shut down now. And we want to leave it shut down. And we want to only make copies of this image from now on. Now the next thing I'm going to do with this image is I'm going to export it. Now, because I'm using shared storage, i.e. on Synology, normally I could just create a shared folder. If it was a Windows share on a Windows server, I could just share a folder and call it exports and be done with it. But because I'm using Synology, Synology does not use or does not have some of the advanced SMB3 functions needed to work with Windows Server. Suffice it to say that we're going to have to export it locally to a local hard drive and then copy it over to our exports folder. So I'm just going to go ahead and close down the virtual machine. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to choose export. And what export's going to do is basically make a backup copy of it. So I'm going to browse over to my V drive and my exports folder, and that's where I'm going to select the folder. So I want to export a copy of that virtual machine into the export folder. Go ahead and click on export and you'll see it'll do its thing. Now when it's done exporting, I'll come back and show you then where I move this to keep this image safe. Alright, so that just took a couple of minutes. Let's go verify that it actually exported the file. So let's go to our V drive, go to exports. There's the directory, and it looks like, yep, there's the image. And there's the machine information. So now what we can do is, I already have exports mapped to drive X here, and you can see that's on our Synology NAS. It's our DS918 Plus. So all I need to do is then copy this and paste it to our exports folder. And you can see I have some other images already out here. Now this Synology NAS is only connected at a gigabit network speed, so we're not going to see the phenomenal transfer speeds I normally get on my network. Now when I normally copy something, all my servers now have 10 gig networking adapters in them, with the exception of the Synology DS918 Plus. And that includes my workstation, which is connected via 10 gig fiber connection back to the switch that was sent to us from Sasha at Blue Telecom, the 10 gig Unify switch. The Dell 1 hypervisor, which is the Dell R710, also has a 10 gig network adapter. And I'll show you speed tests on that here in an upcoming episode where I cover my 10 gig networking again. But suffice it to say, I get about 250 to 300 megabytes per second when copying to that Dell. And then I'll show you what my results are when copying to that Synology flash station in that video that's coming up. So this is how I do my Windows Hyper-V machines, how I create them, Sysprep them, and then export them so I can import them later and use them without having to create a brand new machine. Now there are programs out there to do this. There are utilities out there where you can do this. This is the manual method. This is the no fuss, no muss method. So those of you running a lab at home, you don't need an additional piece of software to back up your damn VMs. So if you follow this procedure that I'm showing you, you should be able to create a VM one time, export it, and then create other images off it over and over again, how many ever you need. And that'll be in part 2 of this video, is how to create and how to import an image from an exported virtual machine. So this unit is ready to go. Now, once I'm done copying this over to the NAS, I can then just simply go ahead and boot this machine up and use it as a Windows 10 virtual machine, which is what I'm going to do. But I'm going to actually rename it so that there's no confusion. This is its own machine, separate from the Sysprep image. So once this copy is done, we'll do that next. All right, so we have our image created, we've Sysprepped it, we've exported it, and we've moved that export copy into a safe directory on our Synology NAS. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to boot this machine up again and get it out of Sysprep mode, get it set up initially, and show you that procedure. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click on it and go to settings, and I'm going to change the name to Win 10 Pro 1909-001 and click apply and then OK. Now I don't need the DVD-ROM anymore, so we'll just unhook that from that machine. Now you notice though our hard drive name is wrong, but what I can do is browse to that location and then I can rename that hard drive right here. Just right click and go to rename. I'm going to go to the end, so it's 1909-001. I like to keep my naming consistent. Double click on it now, you notice that's changed the name. I'm going to click on apply, and everything else looks good. 4 gig of RAM, 4 virtual processors. We've renamed the image, we've renamed the virtual machine. So now I can tell it okay, so let's connect again. And then let's start up the virtual machine, and it should boot up into setup mode, which is what we want, because we need a Windows 10 Pro machine out in our lab to show you some of the neat stuff we're going to do in our lab. I might even do this with a Windows 7 machine or Windows 8, 8.1, I don't know. I kind of liked Windows 8.1. I was probably the only, not 8, Windows 8.1. I was probably the only person that did. Vista was okay too. I mean, I got a lot of work done in Vista. I didn't like some of the changes they made to it, but yeah, you know, I'm a Windows, not a fanboy, but I mean, I've been using it for 30 some odd years now, and they, you know, from DOS. I think I got my start out on DOS 3.0. So I've been around a long time, and so has Microsoft. So, and you know, Windows is just DOS with a bunch of pretty stuff put on top of it. Just like Linux is, even with the GUI today, it's the same process they went through. They started out at the command line. In fact, Linux is still at the command line, so is Windows, because some stuff is more efficient at the command line. For both Windows and Linux, but they've both had kind of the same thing. Somebody plunked a GUI on top of the underlying core operating system. So now people are always, the big thing I remember with Linux is, oh, it does more with less resources. Well, not anymore. If you want to get stuff done like you can in Windows, Linux needs a lot of resources too, especially with these new GUIs. And that's the problem. They've got 1,000 different GUIs you can stick on top of Linux, and everybody has their own idea of which one is best. I don't get involved in that pissing match, but I will tell you I like the Windows interface. There's some things I don't like about it, but it's what I use to get work done. And you'll see, as this boot up is proof, it's a kind of a semi-slow process, because what Windows is doing is going out and getting information on all your devices and reading a bunch of files, so it's pretty busy in the background. All right, so it finally came up, so it's going to walk us through our region settings. We're going to have to create user account, all that good stuff. So once we're done with this, then we will have a Windows 10 virtual machine set up for our use in our lab. So a little work on the front end makes for a lot less work on the back end. I don't know if that exactly came out right, but I think you get what I mean. meaning that if we do our work at the beginning, we don't have as much to do once we get the virtual machine created. I mean, you can imagine having to go through the install process for 10 or 20 machines. That's why Ghost was invented years ago. I'm going to go ahead and accept the license agreement. That's what we used to do. We'd set up one machine, physical machine. Like when I worked for a computer company, we were always selling computers to universities. We had contracts with them where we would set up their labs for them, and 20, 30 machines, old 286s, and I'm a domain join instead. Took forever to get one of them set up, and then fortunately the program Ghost came along, and we were able to create a central image of machines and then just ghost them down the assembly line as we built them. Now normally I would type Adama in here, but it's not going to let me because there's already an account that was created called Adama, so I'm just going to call mine Adama 1. And then we're going to answer our security questions. So our security question was entered. No, we're not going to do activity history. No, I don't want you to track me. I don't need a digital assistant. I'm good at screwing things up on my own. And I know this has very little effect on telemetry, but it feels good to click all these buttons, and they're there and they need to be clicked anyway. So go ahead and accept it. I would suggest you read that sign, but I've done this so many damn times. I just, I get in a habit of doing it. So, but yeah, read your license agreement and read what's on the screen before you just click through it. Could save your butt. All right, so now it's getting our Windows desktop set up and getting our user account set up. And yes, you see the little Windows activation down here. I will activate my Windows server at some point. But it's not like Server 2016 where it would shut off if you didn't activate it. Well, at least it hasn't been my experience that it does that. Now, I'm not running a trial version of Windows Server 2019. I'm running an actual OEM or legitimate, I shouldn't say legitimate. I'm running an OEM version off of, normal install media. So that's why you don't see the trial, Windows trial. Alright, so there we are at the desktop. I'm going to go ahead and run Task Manager just so you can see what's going on, how many CPUs it's got, how much memory. And, Windows, it's always sluggish when you first start it up because it's doing so much stuff in the background. It really does get quite annoying. There we go. Task Manager is finally responding. And it always comes up at 100%, even if nothing is going on. So let me change my CPU. So I've got 4 virtual CPUs, 4 gig of RAM, 128 gig hard drive, and then the Ethernet controller. And then you can see the CPU usage. Yeah, OneDrive, always eating up CPU usage. So, but that'll even out. But there you go. We got a virtual machine. We created it. We did all the updates. We created an image out of it. We exported that image, and then we put it in a safe location so that we can use it again if we need to. And then we renamed our virtual machine and the virtual hard drive, booted up, ran through the Windows 10 setup process, and we're ready to go. We now have a virtual machine, and we could simply import that virtual machine we exported. I'll do that in another episode, or another episode, so you can see how we actually import a virtual machine and set it up from an exported image. But there you go. So there you go, YouTube. Now, the way I did it is a very oversimplified way of doing things. So if it's a small mom and pop network, using Sysprep in this manner will probably work just fine for you. There are other ways of deploying Windows 10 images using the Windows Deployment Service. I'm also going to show you how I've set up a Pixie Boot server and show you how to install off of a PXE boot image, because that way you kind of have the best of both worlds. Now, Windows Deployment Service is fine, but it's really designed to be used in a larger environment, which I don't have. and I don't deal with large enterprise clients. Most of mine are small to medium sized businesses, anywhere from 5 to 100 users, somewhere right around there. And that's really what this video is geared toward. So anyway, we hope you found the video entertaining and informative. As always, please leave your comments down in the comments section. If you're inclined to donate, we accept PayPal and Patreon. The links are in our About section and on the bottom of the page here, or the bottom of the channel. Also, we mirror all of our content on Library, so there are links to Library are in the section down below and in the About section. So come and see us there if you're so inclined to do that. Thanks again for coming to see us, and please don't forget that we'll see you on the other side.